Ethan stepped inside, his gaze scanning the dimly lit lounge. The soft hum of jazz played in the background, but the music didn't reach his ears. His eyes locked onto something that made his breath hitch. Zara's fingers tangled in Layla's hair, her lips inches from the woman he had been secretly seeing. His heart pounded, but he kept his face unreadable. He moved closer, drawn in like a moth to a flame. Layla laughed, a sound that used to be just for him. Now, it belonged to someone else. His wife. Layla's body tensed when she saw him. A flicker of panic crossed her eyes, but she masked it with a smirk. Zara, however, didn't flinch. She met his gaze head-on, daring him to react. Ethan's voice was calm, but there was an edge beneath it. I wasn't expecting to find you two together. Layla exhaled slowly, setting her drink down with deliberate care. Neither was I. Zara raised an eyebrow. That's funny, because I knew. Ethan's jaw tightened. His mind raced, connecting the pieces. His affair with Layla hadn't been a secret after all. A few feet away, Noah wiped the bar with slow, careful movements, his sharp eyes never leaving the scene. He'd always had a good instinct for tension, and this was a storm waiting to break. Lucas leaned against the bar beside him, pretending not to watch, but his fingers drummed an uneven rhythm on the counter. Ethan had been his secret, too. Sophia stirred her drink, lips curling in quiet amusement. Messy, she murmured under her breath, just loud enough for Lucas to hear. He shot her look, but she only smiled. Ethan took a slow breath, controlling the anger simmering in his chest. How long? Zara tilted her head, considering. Does it matter? Layla swallowed hard, but she didn't answer. Her silence was enough. Ethan's voice dropped lower. You should have told me. Zara gave a short, humorless laugh. Told you? Like you told me about her? The weight of unspoken words settled between them. Layla glanced at Noah, catching the way his hand tightened around the glass he was holding. She knew that look. He was beginning to suspect. Lucas shifted uncomfortably, suddenly feeling too exposed. He wasn't just watching a confrontation, he was standing in the middle of it whether they knew it or not. Sophia's voice was soft but cutting. Seems like nobody in this room is as faithful as they pretend to be. Ethan exhaled sharply. His gaze flickered between Layla and Zara, betrayal twisting inside him. He had walked in expecting familiarity. Instead, he had found something else entirely. And yet, he couldn't look away. Ethan's fingers curled into fists at his sides, but he forced himself to stay still. The weight of Zara's words settled on his chest. She had known. All this time, she had known about Layla, yet she had never confronted him. Instead, she had done the same thing. Layla shifted uncomfortably, her usual confidence cracking at the edges. I didn't mean for this to happen, she said, voice quieter now. Zara let out a dry laugh. That's the thing about affairs. No one ever means for them to happen. Ethan's throat tightened. He had always thought he was the one in control, the one making the choices. But he had never considered that someone else might be playing the same game. At the bar, Noah set his glass down with more force than necessary. How long? His voice cut through the tension, sharp and direct. He wasn't talking to Ethan. His eyes were locked on Lucas. Lucas froze.
Noah. No. Don't do that.
Noah's jaw clenched. Just answer me. Sophia leaned back, sipping her drink, as if the unraveling of these secrets was nothing more than entertainment. But there was something in her eyes, something knowing. Lucas swallowed hard. It's not what you think. Noah's laugh was bitter. Really? Because I think you've been screwing around behind my back. Lucas looked at Ethan, desperate for something, an explanation, an excuse, anything. But Ethan only shook his head. Don't look at me to fix this. Layla let out a slow breath, glancing at Sophia. There was an understanding between them, one that hadn't needed words. They had been here before. Different people, same situation. Sophia met her gaze, lips curving slightly. You always did have a thing for complications. Layla flinched, but she didn't deny it. Zara crossed her arms, watching as everything crumbled around them. So, are we all just admitting it now? That none of us are innocent. Noah's eyes darkened. I thought I was. Lucas exhaled shakily. Noah, please. But Noah had already turned away. Ethan finally moved, stepping closer to Layla. His voice was quieter now, but no less intense. Did you love me? Layla hesitated. It was only for a second, but it was enough. Ethan's chest tightened. He had walked in thinking he had control. But control had never belonged to him. Zara tilted her head, studying him. Does it hurt? He didn't answer. He didn't have to. Layla looked down, fingers tightening around her glass. She had never meant for any of this to happen. But meaning didn't change reality. And the reality was, nothing would ever be the same again. Silence stretched between them, thick and suffocating. Ethan's gaze burned into Layla, waiting, needing an answer. But what could she say? That she had loved him? That she still did? That she had loved Zara, too? The truth wouldn't soften the betrayal. Zara sighed, swirling the drink in her glass before setting it down. You don't actually care if she loved you, she said, eyes locked on Ethan. You just want to know if you were the only one. Ethan flinched. She was right. Layla swallowed hard. I didn't plan this. Any of it. Zara arched an eyebrow. And yet, here we are. Ethan turned away, rubbing his face with one hand. He had spent so much time hiding his affair, believing he was the one with the secret. But he had been blind. Lucas exhaled sharply, his own secrets pressing in. You want honesty? His voice was tight.
Fine.
I was with Ethan. Noah stiffened. His fingers curled against the bar, nails pressing into the wood. You're lying. Lucas looked at him, expression unreadable. I'm not. The words landed like a punch. Noah let out a breath, shaking his head. How long? Lucas hesitated. The answer would destroy whatever was left between them. Almost a year. Noah laughed, but there was no humor in it.
A year.
He nodded slowly, as if forcing himself to process it. Then he turned to Ethan. And you? Did you even think about what you were doing? Or were you too busy screwing over everyone in this room? Ethan didn't answer. He didn't have a defense. Sophia sighed, stretching her arms as if the weight of their collective mess was exhausting. This is getting dramatic. Layla shot her a sharp look. You think this is funny? Sophia tilted her head. I think it's predictable. Layla's stomach twisted. You don't get to say that. Sophia leaned in slightly, voice lower now. Don't I? We both know I was never enough for you. Just like they won't be. Layla's chest tightened. She had hurt Sophia once. She had thought it was over. But maybe, in some ways, it never was. Zara drummed her fingers against the table. So, what happens now? Ethan let out a slow breath. He had walked in expecting to confront a lie. Instead, he had found himself drowning in the truth. Noah pushed back from the bar, shaking his head. I'm done. His voice was flat, empty. With all of you. Lucas flinched, but didn't try to stop him. Zara's gaze flickered to Layla. And you? Layla's throat tightened. She didn't have an answer. Maybe she never had. Sophia sighed, finishing her drink. Like I said, predictable. And just like that, the last piece of control shattered. Ethan stood there, shoulders tense, watching as Noah walked away without looking back. It was the kind of exit that didn't leave room for second chances. Lucas didn't move, didn't call after him. He just stood frozen, as if finally realizing what he had lost. Zara exhaled slowly, pressing her fingertips to her temples.
Well,
that was messy. Layla's chest felt tight. Is that all this was to you? Zara turned to her, expression unreadable.
No.
But it doesn't change anything. Ethan's voice was quieter now, drained. So, what happens next? Nobody answered. Sophia smirked, setting her empty glass down with deliberate care. That's the thing about secrets. Once they're out, they don't just disappear.
They stay.
And they ruin things. Layla clenched her jaw. You don't have to enjoy this. Sophia's smile faltered for a second. You think I do? Her voice softened, just slightly. I just stopped pretending this was ever going to end well. Lucas finally moved, rubbing a hand over his face. I should go. But he didn't move. Zara let out a short laugh. Go where? Back to Noah?
She shook her head.
He's not waiting for you. Lucas swallowed hard, but didn't argue. Ethan looked at Layla one last time. I really thought you were mine. Layla's throat tightened. I thought I was, too. Zara scoffed. No one belongs to anyone. That's the problem. Ethan stepped back. He didn't know why he had stayed this long. Maybe he had hoped for something, an apology, an explanation, a way to fix what had already shattered. But there was nothing left to fix. Layla watched him go, her chest aching. She had been at the center of it all, yet she had never felt more alone. Lucas turned to Sophia. You always seem so sure of everything. What do you think I should do? Sophia studied him, then shrugged. Does it matter? Lucas blinked.
What?
Sophia leaned in slightly. You're looking for an answer that makes this easier. There isn't one. Zara grabbed her coat, slipping it over her shoulders. It's over. Whatever this was. She didn't sound sad. Just tired. Layla felt the weight of those words settle deep in her chest. Sophia stood, giving Layla one last look. For what it's worth, I don't think you ever meant to hurt anyone.
A pause.
But you did. Layla couldn't argue with that. One by one, they left, until only Layla remained. She sat there, staring at the empty glasses, the ghost of conversation still lingering in the air. She thought about Ethan.
About Zara. About all of them.
She thought about how it all began, and how it had ended. She thought about the moment Ethan had walked in, and how, even now, she wasn't sure what he had been looking for.